Awesome. So I am here today with John Robertson. He is a psychedelic educator and guide with experience in the fields of mindfulness, meditation, and personal growth. He's the lead creator of an organization called Maps of the Mind, which helps people grow by providing resources to facilitate safe, deliberate, and intentional psychedelic experiences. And as part of this mission, he teaches two programs: the Conscious Psychedelic Explorer, which helps journeyers become skilled psychonauts, and Facilitating Psychedelic Experiences, which is a program to help guides become more skillful facilitators. So, beyond the role he plays as a psychedelic educator, John is the founder and lead facilitator of New Moon Retreats, a legal retreat center in the Netherlands. And he's also worked as a trip sitter at legal psilocybin retreats in Jamaica and the Netherlands. He has experience with a wide range of substances and has facilitated or participated in over 200 psychedelic sessions, all of which has spurred his passion for sharing his learnings with others on their journey of discovery with psychedelics. So thank you so much for being here, John.
Thank you, Aviva, and thank you for the wonderful introduction.
Absolutely. So I'd love to start off just by getting a sense of your mission and vision at Maps of the Mind. What are you up to?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, overarching mission and vision is really to create a world where safe and beneficial psychedelic experiences are more accessible. Uh, and then everything from there is really, you know, supporting that major vision.
Right.
So yeah, to help and create a world where everyone has access to them safely, and a world where, as psychedelics are reintegrated into society, where they can become accepted and integrated as, these incredible tools for healing, health, insight, and growth. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and I guess overall to that end, providing practical resources. I have quite an emphasis on providing practical information and services, and just overall encouraging responsible and careful use, because they are powerful substances, tools, however we want to call them. They're very powerful things. So I also feel there's a level of responsibility in acknowledging that and encouraging safe and careful use of them.
Yeah, and I mean, you're doing that on two fronts. So you offer education to journeyers to help them navigate psychedelics more skillfully, which is just a critical offering these days, especially as we mainstream. But you've also developed an online course to help people learn how to become psychedelic facilitators and guides. So what was the impetus? What drove you to create that course?
Yes, the facilitation course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess, as you said, as we're mainstreaming, more and more people having experiences, and more people requiring support for experiences. Um, and there's a need there, and at the same time, there seems to be more and more people wanting to support other people as people are experiencing the benefits themselves. They're wanting to kind of pass those gifts on, or it's quite often when somebody has a beneficial or transformational experience, they think like, oh, if only my mum could have this experience, or oh, if only my friend could have this experience. And so then they want to be able to support other people. So I wanted to just hand over some things that I'd learned over the years and how I got started to other people in that, because that was also the position that I was in. I had personally meaningful experiences, and I was like, wouldn't the world, I think many of us have had this thought of, oh, wouldn't the world be a better place if more people had access to this experience, or more people could have this experience? So that was really the driving factor between me working in the space, but also creating this offering. Um, and then I guess a little more specifically about this offering, There's, as psychedelics kind of getting medicalized, there's been some discussion and debate about access, particularly financial access.
Mhm.
Um, and simply, a lot of people are priced out of having a supported psychedelic experience, at least by the channels that are currently in place or that they're able to go through. Um, and I think it's definitely a case by case basis. Some people are going to require a lot of support. Some people maybe are going to need someone who has more qualifications. Um, but also at the same time, that's not the case with everybody. And I think if there's a sufficient screening and preparation with people, then facilitation can be done by, to put it more lay people, if they have some basic knowledge, that it's a basic experience, they know the situation they're getting into, and they're able to facilitate for other people. I mean, I myself and lots of people I know in the space started out in self-organized sessions, not paying anything or tripping, journeying with friends. And I started out, sitting for friends and sitting even family members. So the kind of, yeah, what made me want to create this was also to be able to pass on that knowledge and experience to other people who are maybe in a similar situation, and have people in their life, in their communities or whoever that they might be able to support.
Yeah, it's such a critical spot. You're right, because a lot of the education that we've seen come up recently is geared towards healthcare professionals or people with specific certifications or designations. And I agree, like in some cases, especially if you're approaching psychedelics from right, like a severely medicalized position, you're going to want that. You'll likely want that kind of facilitated support. But a lot of people are just experimenting. They want to learn, right, how to transform or self-actualize or tap into something bigger or learn about the mysteries. And we don't necessarily need medical support for that sort of thing, but there's still a danger of potentially, diving into that space without any support or facilitation. So this is a really beautiful bridge for that kind of help. On that topic, so who are your ideal candidates for the course? I mean, it sounds like lay people, general people who might be interested in facilitating. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much, yes. And I guess mostly people who are starting out on that path, for enthusiastic beginners,
Mhm.
or for people who are maybe interested in becoming a facilitator or starting out on that path. They maybe have had that, transformational experience, or maybe they've just read the benefits,
Right.
or maybe they know somebody that is planning to have an experience on their own or whatever, and they think, well, I want to be able to support them. So people who are maybe more in this, yeah, in the starting out on that road or interested in that role and kind of want to learn a bit more, maybe before investing more significantly down that path of training and qualification, um, and to give them, the ground level basics and also a little bit of insight into what is going to be required of them if they do want to seriously commit to that path, and go further down.
So on that topic, what can students expect to learn? Like you said, there's some of the basics. Do you cover specific information?
Yeah, there's basically four main parts to the course. I could maybe just walk through them
Yeah,
briefly.
please.
Sure. Yeah, the first one is I look at, it's quite general, but I look at terms. So we look at different terms and roles. So I look at, there's therapist, trip sitter, facilitator, shaman, space holder. There's all these different kind of terms, and with them roles and ideas of what we do. So I kind of walk through those and the differentiation between them to get people thinking about the different roles of facilitation that there are, and maybe get people think about what resonates more with them or what they feel more comfortable with. You know, for example, I I don't have any kind of I don't come from any shamanic lineage. I don't have that's not my approach. I'm from a Western background. I'm more, you know, it's more from like a therapeutic angle. So that's a role that I feel more comfortable with. So these we kind of have a look at that just to begin with. Then after that first step, I look at and we go through different types of support that facilitators can offer. So, you know, there's the basic ensuring physical safety. Then, you know, maybe there's emotional support that you can offer to people. There's, you know, the differentiation between maybe a non-directive role where you're kind of sitting back and allowing people and maybe a more active role as more of a guide. There's, you know, basic technical things, you know, handling music, taking care of the setting, making sure people have blankets and water, this kind of thing. Um, Help with preparation and integration, which would maybe be a little bit more in a coaching role, but I still kind of put it under the broad umbrella of facilitation or supporting people. And then also just help another like final means is helping people to find further support. So if you realize that, okay, this person wants to have a journey, I'm not qualified or I don't feel comfortable and confident enough to be able to support them, then at the least maybe I can help them find somebody who can or connect them to a service that is able to. So there's that. Um, then we go through best practices, and this is an overview and exploration of basic best practices, like further learning for facilitators, screening and assessment, which is, you know, just a basic anyone you want to facilitate for just do a basic level of screening to assess their safety and suitability for the substance and the dosage that they're going to be or want to be working with. The three core practices for clinicians, which even if you're not a clinician, I think is useful: consent, confidentiality, and follow-up. Um, Self-care and support as a facilitator, that's important for you also. Um, and then listening, which I think is just a core skill for anybody in a facilitation role, really. So we look at that and dive into that a little bit. And then the final section is kind of looking at one-to-one versus group. So we look at the advantages and drawbacks of one-to-one sessions versus group sessions, and you know maybe the complications that come, the complications and benefits that could come with each of those, and also a look at you know the benefits and drawbacks also of different ratios of facilitators to journeys. You
Right.
know, there's one to two, one to with four, maybe there's a group of eight and there's three facilitators or what, however it is. So just a little bit look at that as well for people, because that can often also be when people are starting out there. Maybe it's a group of friends that want a trip together and they're like, well, we need one of us to sit. And you want to think about, well, is one person going to be enough for four people? And, you know, this kind of thing. It depends on other factors like what's the experience level of the people who are going to be doing it, what's the experience level of the sitters, and so we also look at those considerations. So that's yeah, a very quick blast through kind of what we cover in the course, but I hope it gives some sense of gives an idea of what's covered.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing overview. It sounds like you've really put a lot of thought and love into creating this. So how does the format work? Is it live? Is it online?
It's it's online. It's all online. I started. I think it's on like the third iteration now. So I've started out by giving it as a live workshop, and I did it like that a few times, and then it grew in length because people ask questions, and then you think, okay, well, this will just be good to include as a new section, and And then it's kind of evolved as time's gone on. And then at some point I thought, okay, I'm just going to record all of this so that it's there for people whenever they want. So it's video lessons pre-recorded. And there's a workbook which is kind of summarizes each section, and then there's exercises at the end of each section, which are also prompted in the video lessons because it kind of grew out of the live offering where we would go through a section and there would be either, a journaling exercise or some kind of interactive, like listening exercise or a breakout group for people to discuss. So that's kind of still built into the course. And yeah, that's the current format. I do occasionally, maybe 1 or 2 times a year, offer it as a live
Oh, nice.
uh, version. So because some people just prefer that, they prefer to have the live aspect, which I totally understand. Um, so that's always available to people who have, maybe purchased it or signed up, and then maybe they never got around to doing it,
Mhm.
or maybe they just want to do it with some other people and have the discussion groups. So I email out members, people who've signed up when that's available and offer them the chance to do it as a live,
No,
in a
no,
live.
that's awesome. Because you're right. I mean, one of the, potential drawbacks of just offering online programs is that people intend to go through it, but unless you're disciplined for self-directed learning, you're not always going to do it. On the flip side, it's got like a lot of benefits because you get to move at your own pace and you get to, right, like do this whenever it works for you. So in terms of signing up, you had mentioned, like, what is the cost to join the program?
It is currently $99 US dollars.
Nice. So super accessible, which is really nice, especially given the amount of information it sounds like you cover, and especially compared to some of the other training out there. So,
I think so, yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think I believe it's very good value. I try to do, follow the thing of what is it, over deliver for what you charge and to provide more value and also try to keep it accessible.
yeah.
So,
Do
yeah.
you provide additional resources? Like you mentioned a workbook, but are there any other things like, intake forms or stuff like that?
Yeah, there are outside of the workbook, there are three documents, I guess, that I provide with people that are all ones that I use and have used for years now. There's the intake form. So, it's a standardized intake form, just collect key information, people's like psychological and family histories, medications. Also just getting to know people a little bit and their intentions. So that's just again for basic safety and to assess people's suitability for an experience. So there's the intake form, there's a session framework document. That's also something that I pull out and run through with all clients before a session, and that it includes like session agreements.
Mhm.
So that, things to help create a structure around, like, okay, there's going to be no sexual contact. You're not going to be allowed to leave the space during the session. And, these basic kind of safety practices and agreements that you make with whoever you're sitting for. I call them ground rules, basically, and they're just to set the stage for a safe and smooth experience. So there's clarity, that helps to create an emotionally safe space. It helps to have clear guidelines. And then there's also in there a little bit about my role, again, bringing clarity, like it has a bit about how I approach the session, what is our level of interaction, that kind of thing. My objective as a sitter, like why I'm there, and my needs as well. So there's clarity around that. And that's standard based on my approach. And I offer that to people, but that, like any of these documents, can be tailored. because maybe somebody has a different approach, so
Mhm.
it's work for them to just take my document and then just share it if they have a different approach or they have different agreements around their session. So they can be tailored, but I do offer the one that I use with clients and with people. And then the third one is I call it preparing for the journey document, and it's basically it contains basic navigation guidelines, information on techniques for journeyers to use if they're nervous or tense or having a challenging experience, and then a very basic but quick overview of setting and common effects of or in my document psilocybin, um, just again to make sure people are informed, have some basic level of knowledge about what they're getting into, and these foundational pieces for people to have going into a psychedelic experience.
That's
So yeah,
super comprehensive, John. It sounds amazing. One of the things you mentioned earlier was that the program is predominantly geared towards people who are sort of starting in the space, but that they may use this sort of as a springboard for additional training going forward. So, like, if people are like, as opposed to sitting for friends and family, if people are serious about turning this into a vocation or a profession, do you recommend like other programs or other steps that they should be taking before they become official facilitators?
mm, it's a good question. I don't know. I feel a little bit cheeky to ask, but maybe I'll ask you one back. I mean, the because the landscape we're in, I'm still not clear myself what is an official facilitator. Um, but maybe one thing I can offer is that there are currently no other courses that I recommend for people going further down. I mean, I have a more comprehensive course, which is for people, the Conscious Psychedelic Explorer, you mentioned at the beginning, which is for people, learning 2 levels of preparation and 2 levels of integration. People go through that as a journeyer themselves or as somebody going through the experiences. Um, but I do say to some people, this is maybe a good next step if you want to learn, because this goes much more in depth on those 2 levels of preparation and 2 levels of integration. And this has the framework that you can use with other people should you want to. So I think there's been 1 or 2 people who have done the facilitating course, and then they've been like, okay, yeah, this is great. Now I want to go further. Um, Outside of that, in terms of coaching and um, sitting courses, there aren't any currently that I know well enough to be able to recommend people to. But the one thing that I normally say to people is try and gain some experience, gain more experience, and if you can, under people who are more experienced than you.
Yeah.
Uh, that's how I learned a lot. I worked at a couple of retreats, as you mentioned, in Jamaica and Netherlands, and I had the benefit to be able to work under people who had a lot more experience and to be, in sometimes a sitting role, a facilitating role, or a supporting facilitator role, which you then have the benefit of observation and you see how other people manage situations and you see how situations arise and how they're dealt with. And I think being able to witness that um, in real life is tremendously useful to learning. So that's something I try and do, and or try and recommend and encourage people to do if they can. Um, but yeah, it's getting it's getting more and more competitive. I
Yeah.
was looking to get volunteer spaces when there wasn't so many people coming into the space, but now I often get a lot of people emailing me, and uh, I think there's so many people there. wanting to go after those. It's not as easy as it once was to get volunteer roles, but I think if possible, I think that's a great way to learn.
Yeah, it really is. And I want to circle that point actually, because part of what we've tried to do at Guides Collective is create those kind of matches where somebody who is just learning can get advice or shadow an experienced facilitator. Or we've definitely heard of guides who don't have therapeutic experience hooking up with therapists when, especially when they're dealing with clients or patients who may have more complex needs. So I agree. I mean, this has to become a circle of practice as opposed to, walking around alone. There's a danger to not knowing, right, what's out there. And you're likely, if you're going to be serious about this as a path, you're likely going to encounter things that you might not be prepared for or that you haven't seen before. And it's useful to have that kind of input for sure. No, it's a good point.
Yeah.
So how about you? What was your personal path towards becoming a facilitator?
Yeah, as I kind of touched upon before, I had my own personal psychedelic experiences, tremendously meaningful, inspiring, all of the reasons why we love psychedelics, healing, therapeutic, and I got very interested in them. And then after some time, I had an experience which was more, I'd say, gave me a glimpse more of the healing
Mm.
aspect of psychedelics, whereas my first ones were more, I'd say, spiritual or mystical. They put me more in touch with those dimensions, and then when I had more therapeutic healing experiences, that was when I really thought, oh, this is something that I really want to be able to play a part in helping other people to access. Um, and that then led me to just really getting involved in almost any project that I could relating to psychedelics. So, I volunteered at conferences. Helped in documentaries, all kinds of things. I sit for friends and family members, or meditation group members who would become interested in it. Um, and I then, yeah, I then started volunteering at a retreat,
Nice.
upcoming retreat. I think it was 2017,
Mhm.
2018, around then. Um, I actually started editing videos for them.
Oh.
Uh, doing video editing. Again, I was doing anything I could to kind of get into it and gain experience. Um, and then I was invited as a how to say a supporting facilitate. I was invited then out on retreat, and then I stayed at the retreat center for a few months, and then I was invited increasingly more becoming in a facilitator role. Um, and then I did that, and then I found another retreat, that I then started volunteering at and working at. And I guess just over time, accumulating more and more experience, stepping up in levels of responsibility in my roles where I was placed. Eventually started organizing retreats. That was when I first took on a role as a lead facilitator. Fortunately, I was, had the benefit of being within a team with diverse experience. So we had a good mix and range of experience between us. So we could cater to most people, or we would be able to accept most people. Um, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess just getting involved where I could, and then just over the years, being leveled up in positions of responsibility.
No, it's a beautiful path, and absolutely you see that. I think we see that a lot of people who, like you said, have impactful personal experiences and then try to find sort of the back end way into the industry because they recognize that there's something here, there's something going on. So for sure. So you've kind of alluded to this, right, in terms of how the space has changed since you've entered it. Like you've said, things have become a little more competitive, but like what have you seen in terms of the growth of the psychedelic space or its trajectory since you've gotten involved?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, so many more people not only interested in having psychedelic experiences, but I mean, uh, I guess I've seen the culture and cultural and societal acceptance shift also more and more openness and acceptance. Responses are more often met with enthusiasm and or curiosity than they were 5 years or 10 years ago. Um, and in terms of the space, I mean, I've seen also, which is quite interesting because I haven't worked in a space or an industry for that long in any other one, but it's been very interesting to see also as it's expanded significantly, a lot of people coming in and leaving. A lot of people coming in and going out, and people coming in with a lot of enthusiasm, and then I guess for whatever reason leaving. So I found that quite interesting because when I was starting out, I think most people who were involved are still involved. But since then, I've seen people come in and then, for whatever reason, leave. So I think that's been an interesting thing to observe is maybe more people hopping on a kind of bandwagon or seeing the trend, or seeing it as some kind of opportunity. And then that hasn't worked out, or they just have realized that it's not really for them, um, and then kind of stepping out to do something else. So yeah, and then yeah, just I guess the increase in numbers.
Yeah. No, it's a really astute observation about people sort of dipping their toes and then, deciding it's not the place they want to play. And I agree. I suspect some of it is just because we've seen so much mainstream media that people are starting to perceive the space as, as a formal industry. I hesitate to refer to the ecosystem as an industry because, like you said before, we don't even really have standards or like what is a facilitator and until we don't have insurance, we don't have, right, like we don't have the sort of foundational building blocks that normally define, at least traditionally define in society, what an industry stands for. And you're right. I mean, like I believe, and this might not be universally true, but I believe that there has to be some kind of real calling to both come in and stay in a space that is as as uncertain as this one can be. So yeah,
Yeah,
interesting
absolutely.
point.
I
Yeah.
think
Would you
um,
would you have advice for like anybody who is considering entering the space?
uh, yeah, I mean, on the back of that, point, and I think it's yeah, totally true what you say that it's. I like how you say also hesitating to call it an because there's no concrete industry standards, there's no a lot of work is still underground, and probably the vast majority, definitely a majority of people having experiences is still in a not legal context. Um, so we're definitely a ways off from that, but hopefully making progress.
Mhm.
But yeah, with that in mind, I would say, um, yeah, just look. I would say check in and just consider your motivations carefully for wanting to do the work, and maybe also thinking about what level of commitment you're willing. to uh, to give and to do, and a lot of people, and myself included, I've definitely, how to say, um, almost, burnt out, or maybe overexerted myself, or not taken care of myself in a kind of passionate, flowy to offer, and to support other people, and to kind of facilitate for other people. I mean, that's why I have as one of the best practices self-care and support, um, to make sure that people getting involved, because I think it can be, um, there's a lot of responsibility when it comes to facilitating for other people. And it can be, of course, there's different people have different, you know, predispositions or abilities to step into that role. But it can be very draining, and it can be very taxing, and it can take a lot of energetic resources, for lack of a better term. Um, so I think that's worth, yeah, I think it's just worth considering, like, why do you want to become a facilitator, and what are you willing to give up to do that? And maybe what do you want to do? Maybe you just want to offer it to, hold a ceremony with friends a couple times a year, right? You get together. Or maybe you just want to be able to support someone who says they're going to do a trip, and you just want to be able to sit with them. And maybe that's all it is. And maybe you don't necessarily need to be offering it as a formal offering and charging people. So I would say, yeah, those are probably things to think about, and just really take care of yourself,
Yeah.
uh, when you be doing that.
Critical points. I remember many years ago, I had been deeply into a practice of yoga. I was practicing constantly. And I said to my instructor, like, I'm thinking of becoming a yoga instructor. And she was like, why? So, oh, look, I'm so involved and I love it. And she says, you just want to practice yoga more. And it was like a really interesting observation, because it was true. I wasn't starting to, have a practice. I really just wanted to delve in for myself. And I think it's a similar type of question of, right, just because you've had a transformative experience, does that mean you want to become a facilitator or guide? And for some people, the answer is going to be absolutely. And for
Mhm.
others, it may not. So
Yeah,
asking about your motivations is an important place to go.
yeah, yeah, definitely. That's a
Yeah.
side question.
Yeah.
How were you practicing yoga?
What's that?
Just curious how much you were practicing yoga. Is
Oh,
this
like I was practicing daily, sometimes more than once a day. I had gotten so deep into it. So it felt like it was a calling,
right? Yeah, yeah.
but no, it was a practice. It was a sacred practice, but it wasn't a calling.
That's it, yeah. And maybe for some people also with psychedelics, maybe that is just beneficial to
Mhm.
you, and you don't need to offer it to other people. And also, I heard it before, but I thought it's a great point. If you're also, passionate about psychedelics and convinced that, like a lot of us, they can help make the world a better place, and you're totally on board with this mission of making experiences more accessible for people, and you also don't have to be a sitter. There's lots of projects going on. You can start, a podcast talking about psychedelics. I mean, even on a micro scale, just being open with your experiences with other people, that in its own way expands the conversation and moves things forward. And, you know, you can, psychedelic organizations or initiatives, they need people to design logos and organize events online, and hold sharing circles. And there's a lot of ways, if you're still really passionate and feel like, oh, this is something that I want to play my part in. There are also other ways of doing it, so it doesn't necessarily have to be being a
Yeah.
facilitator. So I think, yeah, just thinking about why facilitation specifically, and yeah, and where are you with regards your experience and knowledge
Yeah.
in way of what you're able to offer other people.
Yeah, no, wise words, that's for sure. So, for people who might be interested in either taking your facilitation course or in exploring your Conscious Explorers course, how do they learn more about this?
The best place to go is my website, mapsofthemind.com, and can find everything there, really. Yeah.
I will be sharing the links going forward. Any other parting words?
Just thank you very much for having me, and a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure speaking with you as well, John. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.